Mr. Chairman, we just got this partition distributed. Just got it.
It's just delivered to me. Well, it was delivered. I made copies.
Yeah.
Pass the doors. Just.
There's one.
All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Good morning. First of all, let me apologize for the little delay that we had in starting, but there was a lively discussion taking place in the in-camera part. And as I like to say, we were deciding the batting order for this morning's resumption of the innings. I apologize to all of you, and I apologize to members of the public who might have been kept waiting. So once again, this is our 7th meeting of the Public Accounts Administration and Appropriations Committee. And I think by now, all of you who are gathered here and the members of the public are well acquainted with the mandate of this committee, which we say is a purposely very broad mandate given. So this morning, we have the following stakeholders: the Ministry of Health. We're very grateful to the Acting Chief Medical Officer and the Acting Permanent Secretary for helping us by being here. The National Insurance Property Development Company. And I want to express my gratitude for Mr. Ali. I know he is no longer at the ministry, but has very graciously given up his time to attend here this morning. Mr. Faz Khan, may I welcome you? And on the last occasion, we had deferred your attendance. And Mr. Imtiaz Haidar Ali, may I first of all congratulate you on your recent acting appointment and welcome you and thank you again for being here. This meeting will be a continuation of the inquiry into the state's acquisitions of pharmaceuticals as it relates to the current processes applicable to its importation and approval. Right? We had discussed what we proposed to do, and we propose, you will recall, ladies and gentlemen, on the last occasion, we stopped at the special import permit process and what was granted. Mr. Khan, I know you were not here. Mr. Faz Khan, that is, right? I think you are the only Khan present today. Am I correct? Yes. So it will be sufficient if I address you by your last name. Right. So I think you were not present, but I'm somewhat reasonably confident that you would have followed these proceedings on the Parliament channel. Okay. So what I propose to do is start with the regulatory framework. And on this special import permit, we stopped the last time on a special import permit, okay? And the answers which we got, the committee felt compelled to seek further clarification from the Ministry of Health, which I know took some effort into getting it done, but thankfully we are very grateful that it was done and provided to us, and the manner in which it was compiled. Can I express my gratitude and perhaps the other members of the committee, our collective gratitude for the easily readable manner in which the information was compiled. And we wish to thank you and by extension your staff who would have assisted in the compilation of that. So thank you very much, Madam PS, Chief Medical Officer, and all of those who contributed to that. So I wish to start this morning by exploring somewhat the regulatory framework for the granting of approvals for the importation of pharmaceuticals into Trinidad and Tobago. And P.S., can I direct this to you first of all? And I propose to move interchangeably in terms of my questioning between the public officers who are gathered here, okay? So, P.S., you would agree with me that the importation of pharmaceuticals is a very important public function. You agree with me with that?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair. Yes, I agree.
Right. And the regulatory framework has to be operated in a manner which gives credibility and efficacy to the guardrails which are established within that regulatory framework. You agree with me?
Agreed, Chair.
Right. Now, we all know that certain ministers of health may or may not be doctors. They may or may not be qualified professionals. You agree with me?
That is so.
Right. You also agree with me that the final approval rests with the minister, so that when it passes through all the administrative procedures, the notice of approval is signed off by the minister.
Yes, Chair.
Right. And we accept that the minister does so with advice. The minister doesn't actually examine each one. It would lead to a crippling effect on public administration. We agree with that.
Agreed.
And that's reasonable to assume, right?
Yes.
But in recognition of that, the legislative framework in giving credence to that fundamental principle of public administration has established legitimate guardrails which ensures that the minister, when he appends his signature to a notice of approval, that it has passed through the guardrails. You agree with me with that?
Agreed, Minister. Chair, sorry.
And an essential and fundamental and indispensable guardrail in that the administrative framework and arrangements would be the Drug Advisory Committee. You agree with me?
Agreed, Chair.
As a matter of fact, the Drug Advisory Committee is established pursuant to a statutory provision, which is Section 29, I think, in the Food and Drugs Act. I can get the exact section if you wish me to.
It is legislated.
Yes, so the Food and Drugs, for the correction of the public record, it is Section 26 of the Food and Drugs Act. If I could just simply remind you of what it says, the minister may establish in the interest and for the protection of public health. So the purpose of the committee is clearly established here. It is the protection of the public health. A drug advisory committee to assist and advise him with respect to 1, drug standards, schedule of drugs, condition of sale of drugs, and 2, cosmetic standards, labeling of cosmetics, and any other matters connected therewith. Part B establishes a food advisory committee, right, for the purposes of that is not entirely relevant for the purposes of this discussion. And then part 2 says the committees mentioned in subsection 1 shall be representative of lay and professional interests and shall comprise such persons as by reason of their knowledge, interest, and experience are considered suitable for appointment thereto. You accept that, okay?
Yes, Chair.
Now, a drug advisory committee has been in existence from your records for how long?
Since I came, I was advised that the committee has been functioning well about 10 years.
Yes.
Yes.
So the ministry has very helpfully given to us all the minutes of the meeting of the Drug Advisory Committee, which I have here. From 2021 onwards, I would imagine there were more predating 2021. But for the current period, this is what we've been provided with. Now, in addition to the Drug Advisory Committee, the role of the Drug Advisory Committee is to consider applications to register new drugs on an individual basis. Would you agree with me with that?
Yes, Chair, I agree.
Perhaps I could direct this to Mr. Khan as well. Mr. Khan, would you agree with me that one of the primary functions of the Drug Advisory Committee, I'm not saying it's exclusive function, one of its primary functions is to consider and advise the minister on allowing importation and registration of new drugs and supplemental drugs into Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, Chair, in terms of registration, yes.
Right, we get to registration just now, shortly. So after the Drug Advisory Committee meets, can I have the document with the considerations, the one page, what the Drug Advisory Committee does? When the Drug Advisory Committee meets, the process of considering approval is a detailed one. Am I not correct?
Yes, Chair.
Right. And this process was outlined to us in a memo submitted by the Chemistry, Food and Drugs Division. I could direct this to Mr. Imtiaz Haider-Ali.
Yes, Chair.
And there's a detailed process for doing so.
Yes, Chair.
Because it has to do with the protection of public health. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
So there is a very onerous process which must be followed. Right? Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
Right. So this is what the Chemistry, Food and Drugs Division tells us, the committee. There's a pre-import stage. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
And at that before importation, pharmaceuticals must be either registered with the Ministry of Health or qualified for an approved exemption pathway, such as government tender-related imports. So you see, I want to get back to that, right? Because I have some questions on that. Then there is pre-import clarification and classification. And at that stage, importers are often request guidance on whether a product is registered or should be classified as a food. And the CFDD, in compliance with its statutory duties, would provide that assistance. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
Then there is the port of entry stage, customs interdiction and CFDD inspection. All imported goods must be declared under the Customs and Excise Act. Well, we know we went through that with the C-75 and C-82 forms and the invoices and all of that, right? And customs may detain items that appear to require CFDD inspection. Now, Mr. Haider-Ali, in your role as the Director of Chemistry, Food and Drugs, what would trigger the customs to ask for inspection?
Customs will ask based on their history of the company and of the product. And if they suspect fraudulent behavior,
Well, fraudulent behavior is a wide all-encompassing term. I want some specific instances.
If the product is not on label in English, if the consignment comes from a country that is not normally associated with the product itself.
But how would customs know that? Customs doesn't even have a list.
No, custom officers have experience dealing with the product.
So what you're telling
So
me,
based on history.
So what you're telling me is that this is a subjective exercise?
And customs part?
Yes.
Well, I cannot answer for customs part, but based on their history of the product and the import.
No. Mr. Haider-Ali. Interdiction acts on reasonable suspicion. Okay? Reasonable suspicion is an objective exercise. There must be some empirical evidence upon which the customs officer is motivated to exercise his power of inspection and interdiction. The case law is replete with instances of that. So what you are telling me is that a customs officer exercises his subjective decision-making process? Because we know from the evidence that customs has never been provided with a list of registered products.
That is
Perhaps
correct.
until just very recently, through the good work of this committee, if I may say so myself. Okay? So that happens, that appear to require CFDD inspection.
Correct.
All right, let's move on a bit. We'll get back to that at some point in time, because in the interest of moving forward. And the CFDD is alerted through detention slips. What form does that detention slip take?
It depends exactly where the product is being held for examination. A detention slip can happen in the airport itself. You can have
I
it
want
one
to
of
know what
entry.
form. Under the Customs Act.
There's a form to fill out.
Yes.
And they give the importer it.
Pursuant to Section 220 of the Customs Act, it is the only form which allows you to detain goods. Chapter 7801 has very limited circumstances in which goods can be detained.
Correct.
Am I correct?
Yes, yes, you are.
Right. The Food and Drugs Act has very limited circumstances under which the chemistry, food, and drugs can detain goods. Am I not correct?
Correct also.
The Customs Act, the power of detention is confined, detention and seizure is confined to the administrative arrangements and the legal framework provided in Section 220 of the Act. It's a notice of detention. Okay?
Correct.
Now, the notice of detention, in order for you to issue a notice of detention, all the conditions which require detention must exist at the time where that notice is issued. The law is very clear on that. There's a decision in the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council called Delta Petroleum. All right? And I think it is Lord Kanwath who gave the judgment. Well, not the judgment. The Privy Council doesn't give judgments. It gives advice. The advice of the board was given, not Lord Kanwath, it was Lord Tolson who I think gave the advice of the board. And he said that before you can exercise that power, all the conditions must exist. So customs seizes, detains, but not seizes this year,
Detain.
and then contacts chemistry, food, and drugs,
Correct. Or the importer.
or the importer. But why would they contact the importer?
The importer will be present at the examination stage. So they will be aware in real time that the product has been detained by customs or the agent.
Or what is the reason provided at that stage?
Customs will write a detention form for CFDD approval.
Well, right, so that's what I'm getting at. If customs doesn't have a list, customs doesn't know the origin of the registered, doesn't know the laboratory, on what basis are they exercising this power of seizure and deferring to the CFDD? That's what I want to know. And that's why I say that prima facie it is a subjective exercise of power having no bearing on an objective basis. That's what I want to know. Mr. Khan, can I direct this to you? Can I ask you this anecdotally? Were you involved in the re-export of a shipment of Panadol that came into Trinidad from Panama because it was not imported by the company that registered Panadol in Trinidad? I urge you to be very careful before you answer me. Yeah?
Just on the onset, I have no files, no document, no email.
Mr. Khan, I'm asking you from your memory.
Right,
It
so
is
yeah.
something that must be in your memory. Did it or did it not occur?
I don't recall, sir.
Mr. Khan, I'm going to ask you this one more time. Huh? You see, sometimes evidence comes in a way. All right, so I'm going to ask you this. In March of 2022, do you recall attending the customs? The company by the name of Vimic Limited?
Vimic Limited?
Yes, who imported $130,000 worth of Panadol out of Panama. Do you recall that?
I recall the company name.
Yes. Do you recall attending? Do you recall leading an investigation into that importation of Panadol and disallowing the entrance of that Panadol into the country in circumstances where the company had previously imported Panadol?
For my recollection and recall, there were Panadol that came in that were in a foreign language, I believe.
Foreign language. Did you examine the goods?
We may have gotten a sample and
Did you examine the goods? Yes or no?
I don't think so, I don't recall.
So on what basis are you recalling that? On what basis are you recalling the decision was made to re-export these goods and deny entry?
Because the information at that time, from what I recalled, there were clear labeling infraction.
All right, where the labeling infractions are in the regulations? What regulation did the labeling breach?
Right, so as per the labeling, any product that comes into the country has to be in the English language, and also for pharmaceutical, it must be registered. So if it
All right, so let's get the registration part out of the way. Panadol is registered. Am I not correct?
Yeah, but if there's a change in labeling, if there's a Spanish or foreign language, then it means it requires a supplemental registration.
All right, so if the labeling has both Spanish and English, French, German, Swiss, various languages, as we know most pharmaceuticals do, what's the problem with that?
Right, the problem with that is that based on the initial registration, it wasn't registered with the dual language.
So hang on a second. So a drug is registered in English. It comes with a label. It comes with various languages, as we all know instructions are, dosages are. That drug will not be allowed into the market with multiple language instructions?
Because of the supplemental nature of it.
Mr. Khan, are you telling this committee that a drug will only be allowed into Trinidad and Tobago where the labeling is solely in English?
No, Chair, I'm not saying that.
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Khan completes his answer, could I just interject by saying, I think we should allow Mr. Khan to give his answer, because every time he's trying to give an answer, you seem to be interjecting. So perhaps if he gives his complete answer, then we might have a story that we could examine thereafter.
Thank you very much.
Perhaps we could allow Mr. Khan to give his answer, and then any of us could, including you, of course.
Mr. Khan,
could ask
can
a
I ask you
question.
once again that where a drug is registered in English language in Trinidad and the labeling comes with multiple languages, that drug will not be allowed into Trinidad?
So when a drug is registered, it is registered based on the composition, based on the labeling. And part of the labeling is the English. if there's any modification to color, to lettering, any changes to those packaging that was not originally registered, then it requires a supplemental registration. An importer has to now go through the supplemental registration to have his product registered based on the modification or change on the labeling.
All right. So in other words, what you're telling me is importation is a very strictly controlled process. That's what you're telling me. There's no trick in that question, Mr. Khan. It's a straightforward question.
Yes, in the sense for public safety, yes.
Yes, so, and it requires stringent adherence to the provision of documentary proof to the satisfaction of the regulatory bodies. You agree with me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the DAC, okay? Let's go through the review again, once again. So the documentary review is done by the CFDD, okay? Am I correct? When the documents are submitted, they're reviewed to the CFDD.
No, sure, are you referring for me to give a response?
Yes.
Okay. Now, based on the new Asikuda system.
No, I'm not talking about importation. I'm talking about registration now.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I am quite familiar with the Asikuda system. I'm talking about registration of pharmaceuticals. So the document is submitted to the CFDD, and a detailed examination is made of those documents. You agree with me?
Yes, correct.
To the point where independent experts are engaged, readers, to read these dossiers. You agree with me?
Yes.
And then the results of the readers are then conveyed to the Drug Advisory Committee. You agree with me?
Yes.
So there's also a drug registration unit. Which comes first, the Drug Advisory Committee or the Drug Registration Unit? Who examines these documents first?
So the drug registration unit, which is headed by the technical secretary, appointed by the minister as a member of the DAC, heads, and all application goes to the unit, to the secretary, where the review is done and completed.
And then sent to the DAC for onward?
Then sent to the DAC for the DAC to determine whether to advise the minister with regards to registration or rejection or defer the application.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And at every stage, is there a reliance on testing and documentary proof?
The testing, there were issues with
We understand the issues. Right. But documentary proof, that's what I want to get to.
Yes.
So there's a strict reliance on the provision of documentary proof.
Yes, sir.
Now, would you agree with me, Mr. Khan, that the DAC, and you headed the DAC for a while, right, didn't you?
No, I was never the chair of the DAC.
But you were on the DAC.
On the DAC, yes.
And you
never
sat.
Chair. Never chair.
All right? As a matter of fact, you've led presentations before the DAC. Yes, I did. Right. On many occasions. Okay? And we'll get to one particular meeting in a short while. But on many occasions, you would have led the discussions at the DAC. Okay?
Yeah, but never chair the DAC.
Who's the chair of the DAC?
At that point in time would have been the CMO, Dr. Roshan Parasram.
The Chief Medical Officer.
Chief Medical
right.
Officer.
So, the DAC, yes. Right. So, after the DAC finishes its deliberations, it then, if it approves, assuming that it approves, it sends it to the minister for the notice of approval. Am I correct?
Yes, from the DAC, it goes to the minister for consideration.
Right. And the minister would basically accede to the request of the DAC. being the experts.
Yeah, because it will pass through the CMO before it goes to the minister.
All right, the CMO before it goes to the minister. Okay. So the CMO, while sitting on the DAC, as chair, also has a secondary role afterwards as a further guardrail before it's actually presented to the minister?
I would say yes.
Okay.
'Cause it
So if I am to get you correctly, Mr. Khan, there are 3 separate guardrails within the regulatory system to protect the public health interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, Chair.
So for the avoidance of doubt and for absolute clarity, it is the Drug Registration Unit that reviews documents. It is the DAC that reviews documents. It is the CMO which conducts a further review. And then ultimately it's the minister. Am I correct?
Yes.
Right. So these approvals ought to pass through 4 stages of consideration before final approval and before onward transmission for gazetting. Am I correct?
My knowledge, yes.
Right. Okay. So let's get to the special permit process. Okay? Am I correct that special permits are granted in 3 circumstances?
Chair, into a special permission permit, as the director, I'm not involved in approving any of those special permission permit.
Oh, you're not?
No.
All right. So and you're sure of this?
I'm certain that I've never approved
Mr. Khan,
given any special permission permit.
I am asking you a straightforward question. Have you ever been involved in the special import process, permit process?
Okay, I have never issued.
I didn't ask you about
permit.
issuance. You can't issue it. We
Correct.
know that.
Yeah, yeah.
We know that. Given your limited administrative role, you cannot issue it. I'm asking you whether you have been involved in the special permit process. It's a straightforward question which requires a straightforward answer.
Yes, in providing technical review.
Technical review? In what way?
How the process works is that once an application is made to the CMO office.
Okay. Let's get the special permit application process. I'm just outlining what we're doing.
Right.
What is the special permit application
Right,
process?
so this is my understanding. As I said, I do not issue any permit under special permission.
I didn't ask you that. I know you don't.
So for my understanding of the process, an application will be made, and I'm subject to correction, but an application will be made to the CMO office. Based on that application, the CMO may decide to issue, or he may send it to the principal pharmacist, and he may send it to the director to determine whether there are critical documents present in the application. One of the critical documents, among others, would be a GMP or a CPP.
Right. So in order to protect the integrity of that process and the transparency of that process, you agree with me that you or Mrs. Siboo, as principal pharmacist and the head of chemistry, food and drug, really should have no interface with applicants, but that really should be done through the CMO.
I agree with that statement.
And you, as a public servant, would never breach that salutary rule of reaching out directly to applicants. You agree with me?
reaching out to applicants to make an application for special
In the
permission.
process and advising applicants what to do and providing your personal cell number. You agree with me, right?
I mean, cell numbers are readily available.
I didn't ask you that. I did not ask you that, Mr. Khan. You are the regulator. An application is being made to the CMO, which you say by your own evidence that you have nothing to do with. It is not your responsibility, nor part of your duty, to reach out to importers or applicants directly, or that of Mrs. Siboo. Am I correct?
I'm trying to recall whether there were any instances of that.
I didn't ask you that. I'm asking you what is your general duty?
Right, so the general duty would be to keep a barrier.
Right. And the reason for that is quite obvious. To protect the integrity and transparency of the system. You agree with me?
Yes, Chair.
Mrs. Siboo, can I inquire whether you agree with that process as well?
Chair, while I agree with the entire process of maintaining that barrier for transparency, in terms of ease of doing business, on some occasions, on behalf of the CMO, we bring it to the attention of the CMO what may be possible outstanding documents or issues, and therefore, in that regard, the CMO would then advise, can we reach out to the applicant just to have the process completed in the quickest possible time, of course, ensuring that there is no conflict in any way. So that's what happens.
All right, let's take that answer for a moment, shall we? Now, when that application is made, does that application go for the consideration of the Drug Advisory Committee at any stage?
Not to my knowledge, Chair.
So a special import permit, where documents may or may not be adequate, does not go to the Drug Advisory Committee?
Not the special permission permit.
What goes to the Drug Advisory Committee?
The Drug Advisory Committee only deals with drugs that come from registration.
Okay, so a special import permit has no basis of going before the Drug Advisory Committee.
No, Chair.
Who decides that, whether the permission is granted or not?
For the special permit,
Yes.
would be the CMO.
Chief Medical Officer.
Chief
right.
Medical Officer.
So can you point me, Mrs. Tagallie, I see you are here. Can I make an inquiry? Well, let me ask Mr. Khan first, and then I'll get to you. Can you point me to the provision in the Food and Drugs Act which gives the Chief Medical Officer the power to grant special import permits?
For my knowledge, none exists.
Mrs. Tagallie, am I correct?
Yes, Chairman.
Am I correct that the Food and Drugs Act makes no reference to the Chief Medical Officer in the regulatory framework of the importation registration of pharmaceuticals? Am I not correct?
Yes, Chairman.
There is one reference in this entire act in the regulations which mentions the Chief Medical Officer. But it has nothing to do with the registration of pharmaceuticals or the importation of pharmaceuticals. Am I correct?
Yes, Chairman.
So where did this power of the CMO come from? I've taken a long time to get to that run-up. Where did this power come from? Who granted the CMO that power? I want an answer. There are 5 senior officials in the Ministry of Health here. And not one of you can give me an answer as to where this power granted to the CMO was exercised. How much is the amount here? Calculate all that. Almost 3,000 times. This power was exercised almost 3,000 times between 2015, January of 2015, to December of 2024. Almost 3,000 times this power was exercised, and nobody here, 5 senior officials, are unable to point me to the specific provision in law.
Through you, Chair.
Yes?
I'd like the principal pharmacist, Ms. Siboo, to respond to how that emanated.
Thank you very much. Yes. Basically, the Chemistry, Food and Drug Division and the Office of the Principal Pharmacist falls under the Office of the Chief Medical Officer. It is my...
All right.
Go ahead.
Stop there for a moment. Yes, I'm going to allow you. What is the provision in the Act which sees the supervisory jurisdiction of the principal pharmacist and the Chemistry, Food and Drugs Division under the supervisory control of the Chief Medical Officer?
Chair, I think that falls under the public service and the organizational structure in terms of reporting relationships and the technical advisory responsibilities.
I'll tell you why I have some difficulty with that, Mrs. Siboo. The Chief Medical Officer is not a statutory provision. It's not a statutory creation. It is a post created on the establishment pursuant to the Civil Service Act. Okay? The difficulty I have with accepting that explanation is that the Chemistry, Food and Drugs Division is a statutory creature created by the Food and Drugs Act. And it does not say anywhere in this Act that the Chemistry, Food and Drugs Division is subject to the supervisory jurisdiction of the Chief Medical Officer. That's my difficulty in accepting that. That's why I'm interrogating it. So I accept there might have been some sort of administrative overreaching there. But what I want to know is what provision in law gave the Chief Medical Officer the power to issue over 3,000 special import permits between the period January of 2015 to December of 2024. What is the provision in law? You're shaking your head. That doesn't go on the
Chair.
record.
Chair, if I may, I noticed the witness is using body language. I think for the purposes of the record, can we get some clarity around the response to the question? I know it might be a little a complex question, but I think for the clarity of the committee, but also for the viewing and listening public, if you can articulate how this may have unfolded, so it can, because I'm quite eager to get the response.
Thank you very much. I think maybe my body language was as a result of not understanding if the question is directed to me or legal, meaning responsibility in law. That's probably why. But I can go ahead if it's okay. So basically, and I'm saying this based on what happens at the ministry, and when I came in 2018, I understand that this would have been the normal procedure, the process. It was my understanding that the Chief Medical Officer is considered the Chief Technical Officer of the ministry in terms of medicines, pharmaceuticals, the provision of healthcare generally for the country, because he's considered the competent authority of Trinidad and Tobago, basically under Article 12 of the INCB 1988. So that is an authority that is there. Hence the reason based on pharmaceuticals and drugs, it is also my understanding as the chair of the drug advisory and with the knowledge and the oversight of the both technical officers of chemistry, food and drug, which I understand now is a separate authority, statutory authority under the Food and Drug Act, as well as the Office of the Principal Pharmacist. We will give technical guidance as it relates to the medicines or the product or the application in front of us, whether the documents presented matches or meets the regulatory requirements. And as a result of that, we will give our recommendation to the Chief Medical Officer, understanding, like I said, it's my understanding that he or she is the office is the Chief Technical Officer for those types of deliberations and recommendations. And it is on that basis these recommendations were given to the Chief Medical Officer, again, in order to be able to have access and availability of supplies in lieu of the product being registered, which is a normal, established legal process.
If I may, I just want to follow on, just again for my clarification, that you are using Chief Medical Officer and Chief Technical Officer synonymously, using those terms synonymously.
So,
in this instance, in the instance of granting the special permissions, so there is, permit me just to gather my thoughts, because this seems to be quite a bit of a maze. So I want to be able to gather my thoughts, and I want to be very clear in terms of how I'm posing the question.
I perhaps would have used a different word. I would have said it's quite labyrinthine.
So in terms of the regulatory framework for the approvals to register drugs, we have essentially a 3 to 4 part sort of tiered system: the Drug Regulation Unit, the DRU, the Drug Advisory Committee, the Chief Medical Officer acting as the Chief Technical Officer, and then you'll have the opportunity to clarify or to provide clarification, and then of course ultimately the Minister of Health. But you're saying in terms of the special permissions, there is the office of there is your portfolio, the principal pharmacist, but then you also then feed that information into the Chief Technical Officer, also the CMO. So if you can help me understand the two complementary roles, but the two complementary roles that seem to suggest, from my understanding, from what you've submitted, that there is some overlap in terms of the CMO as a regulator and the CMO as Chief Technical Officer, who is also the advisor. So if you can help me walk through that maze, or to use the chair's terminology, the labyrinth.
thank you very much. So, like I said, it is my understanding, the Chief Medical Officer is the Chief Medical Officer, medical. But in terms of how we look at drugs, how we assess drugs, the technical advice or the technical person giving the advice to the Honorable Minister basically will come from the Chief Medical Officer portfolio. That office, that person would give so we consider it technical advice then on medicines, on those types of matters. Pharmaceuticals is more of a operational, technical, but the Chief Medical Officer doesn't do the how should I put it, down to earth operational part of it. But the technical advice for the use of a medicine or the permission for a drug to say, okay, we have reviewed all of the requirements, all of the documents to ensure. So I think it's the understanding of the word technical, but the Chief Medical Officer, I'm just saying a characteristic will be technical advice. But the Chief Medical Officer is the Chief Medical Officer.
Can I ask you one thing, Mrs. Siboo? I think it's Mrs. Doodnath is your correct designation. Where in the public service does a Chief Technical Officer in the entire architecture of the public service, can you point me to one instance where a Chief Technical Officer can issue an import permit? The entirety of the public service. It doesn't exist.
Correct, Chair. It does not exist.
So
but
your attempt to clothe the chief medical officer with a veneer of jurisdiction by the adornment of that fig leaf of a chief technical officer simply doesn't hold water. He has no decision-making power. Am I not correct? Am I not correct?
I think so. I would defer to legal, please.
Mrs. Tagallie, am I not correct?
Yes, Chairman.
Senator Naked, I see you.
Given what we just heard, Chair, what would be the reason for trying to cover, for lack of a better word? Senator Arts stated that there were certain layers involved. I don't understand why or how the chairman of the DSC, which was the CMO, could also be then the reference after that. That is a conflict of interest that I don't understand. And not only that, 3,000 approvals given as CMO, obviously without any legislative jurisdiction. I think we applied the term rogue before in this, and we met with some opposition. Pardon the pun. I think if you are talking about rogue, something wrong here. 3,000, plus he has a clear conflict of interest in granting special permissions. I mean, you cannot tell me, because I know Dr. Parasam, and he's a very level-headed fellow. You cannot tell me 3,000 permissions granted just like that.
Yes, Senator.
Chair Sri, if I can just follow on Senator Naked's question. I must admit I'm overwhelmed by the amount of communication, the submissions, but the conversation around the chief medical officer and this, what I would want to use the term overlapping roles, I'm seeing communication from an administrative officer in the office of the chief medical officer, in the paper trail of approvals with respect to the special permission. So that adds another layer of ambiguity to my mind. So I'm not seeing the chief medical officer in the person as we knew that individual to be, not the holder of the office. I'm not seeing the holder of the office involved in this paper trail in terms of the approvals process. So I am even further perplexed, Chair.
Well, it's mind-boggling that all of this could be done with an astonishing level of informality. When a special import permit is applied for and some measure of technical evaluation is done on it, how is this transmitted to the CMO? By way of written correspondence? Is it, Mr. Khan?
Via email, more or less, is sent to the CMO office.
Saying what?
For example, if an application comes in and it has the CPP, GMP, even the certificate of analysis, will indicate to the CMO it has this for the CMO consideration.
So there is a paper trail that exists somewhere. You are assuring us of that, Mr. Khan?
What I would say, there's emails, and there may also be paper trail as well.
Mr. Khan, are you assuring us that some measure of technical evaluation was done on those 3,000 special permits that had been granted between that period by the chief medical officer, that each one was evaluated and sent to him for his ultimate decision?
I cannot confirm 3,000, because I don't have the figure.
Well, let me read it out to you, right? Between 2020 and 2025, 1,898 were granted. In 2015, 4 were granted. 2016, 43 were granted. 2017, 353 were granted. 353 were granted. 2018, 190 were granted. 2020, 290 were granted. It's 1,191 in that period, okay? In 2020, check it. 2021, 336. 2022, 357. 2023, 505. 2024, 357. I might have been off. My figures are, the compendious figures, 2,761. So for the sake of the public record, let me correct that. I said 3,000. So it's, I beg your pardon, it's 2,761 times the chief medical officer exercised a jurisdiction which he plainly did not have by any legislation. Senator Nakid.
Chair, the gentleman in the back would like to respond. Before I ask my question, please.
Mr. Chair, this clearly is demonstrating this 1,961 special import permits has been a progression from 2015 to 2024. But what is very disturbing is the apparent collusion.
All right, Mr.
No, what I want to say.
No, hold on, Mr. Sucha.
Yeah.
Hold on. I think collusion is a very strong word to use. In the absence of evidence, I'm not going to permit you to cast aspersions on people.
All right.
So hang on a second, we'll get to you in due course.
Okay, no problem. Thank you,
Senator
Chair.
Nakid will ask a question.
Well, then the obvious question that the public, that no one seems to want to address is, we have all these special permits being granted. We have this level of security, these guardrails, as the chair says, obviously compromised. Who is in a position of authority to allow or to see that 2,761 special permits were granted by the CMO or CTO or however you want to term it, and let that pass? Who is in that position? I would like a clear answer. Nobody?
Chair, through you, might it be appropriate to pose the question to the former PS who would have been the presiding?
I was going to get to that.
Who was presiding in
But
the
I think
office.
before we get there, Minister Hussain wishes to ask a question. Minister Hussain, can I get you, and then we will ask Mr. Ali.
Thank you very much.
Questions, because I want to come back to Mr. Khan.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I just want to delve in a little more into the special permit and its criteria and so on. Based on the documents presented to us, there are 3 specific circumstances that trigger the process for special permits.
Yes.
1, unavailability of drugs from the registered manufacturer. 2, the need for clinically therapeutic alternate drug due to the unavailability of the existing preparation. This may be due to supply chain disruptions for various reasons. And 3, personal use. Am I right? I think we could ask the PS if that is in fact the policy.
Was the policy.
Was,
that I
right?
meant.
At
Yes.
that time. PS, can you guide me and indicate whether or not this policy had the approval of the cabinet?
Oh, okay. I see.
As far as I know, I've investigated since I came, assumed duty, no.
So there's no cabinet approval for this policy?
No.
Who would have set this policy?
I would prefer to defer that to the principal pharmacist.
The principal
or
pharmacist?
perhaps the former PS.
Chair, through you, if I may follow up. Acting PS, sorry to interrupt, Minister, but Acting PS said that was the policy.
Yes, it's
But you read from a document dated May the 6th of 2026 that PS Fortune provided. So, no, March the 6th, 2026. Sorry, March the 6th, sorry, me, I'm rushing ahead, rushing there. You said that that was the policy, but in your submission on March the 6th, that is listed as the policy.
We will provide an answer as it pertains to the previous period.
Okay, all right, okay, my apologies.
Yes, in all fairness, the acting permanent secretary, the criteria identified here was confined to the period which the ministry was asked for.
Yes.
So, Minister Hussain,
Yes,
can you continue?
The former PS, can you tell us who set this criteria?
Sure, thank you. Through the Chair. Chair, I'm not familiar with the particular process of special permission. The applications that will be received, the processing, and the subsequent approval or rejection would not have passed through my office. This would have been done through the office of the CMO members. So
Okay,
in terms
so
of...
in that regard, I want to ask Mr. Khan a few questions now with regard to that.
But Chairman, before you move on, so no one at this point in time can indicate to us who set this policy. None of the senior management of the ministry can tell us where this policy came from.
Mr. Khan, well, no, somebody needs to answer. Sure. Well, is it that no one is able to answer this question? This is a very valid question posed by Minister Hussain. No one sitting here. We have 1, 2, 3. Ms. Fortune, we will exempt you from this because you, as Guyanese say, you like fresh fish, you now come. Right? So you, Dr. St. Bernard, I don't think it's fair to pin this on you because you were not in that decision-making role. So we have 5 senior people from the Ministry of Health. We have a former permanent secretary who presided over the ministry at the relevant period, I might hasten to add. We have Mr. Imtiaz Haider Ali, who seemed to be, forgive me, this is not meant to be pejorative, but a multi-headed administrative hydra at the time. Mr. Khan, who was the Director of Chemistry, Food and Drugs. We have the Principal Pharmacist, Mrs. Siboo, and we have the Head of Legal. And between 5 of the most senior officials who were there at the time, no one can give an answer to this?
Chair, if I may.
Yeah, Chair, we get
yes.
an answer.
Okay. If I may try to attempt to bring some clarity in terms of, so the 3 specific areas of criteria would have been the criteria that would have been used to, how should I put it, to be used to consider the granting of the permissions. So if we don't have a drug in lieu of the registered preparation, but it's required for the country, that would be one of the criteria. So these were the criteria, basically.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Okay. Can you tell me who set the criteria?
I can't say it was circumstances that came to the ministry, but I don't know of any single...
Let's introduce a measure of jocularity into this. Having regard to what you just said, how does Bengue and Redoxon meet that criteria?
Mr. Chairman, I want to go further there. Mr. Chairman, I'm seeing...
Don't shake your head, Mrs. Siboo. Answer me. How does Bengue and Redoxon meet that criteria which you just told the committee must exist?
Chair, I cannot say those 2. I am speaking...
There are many others, you know. I really just put those 2 because those are the ones that the public knows.
Mr. Chairman, can I explore 2 other
Yes,
options?
of course.
Smith Robinson, who was the company that received the highest number of special permits overall. We received a list of the special permissions granted to Smith Rob. Phillips Milk of Magnesia Original, 29th of March 2023, special permission granted for that. Listen, 22nd September 2023, Smith Rob, Listerine Cool Mint Antiseptic Mouthwash, special permission granted for that. Listerine Total Care Fresh Mint Anti-Cavity Fluoride Mouthwash, special permission, Smith Rob. Listerine Ultra Clean Antiseptic Cool Mint Wash. That is special permission granted for that. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask all of the members here, any one of them can answer. Which category of the criteria did Listerine and milk of magnesia fall under?
Let's include Bengue and Redoxon.
Bengue and Redoxon.
Chairman, before they answer, just as a part of the jocularity, all people need Bengue, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I don't need a response.
No.
It's just part of the jocularity.
Not only old people,
Okay.
some of them young people need it too.
But, yeah, I guess they could answer.
An answer as to which of these three categories clearly identified by the ministry as being the prevailing policy at the time, those items fell under Listerine, milk of magnesia, Bengue, Redoxon, at least. Which one of those three criteria, Mrs. Siboo? You were the principal pharmacist. You were principally involved in this project. Which one of those three criteria did those drugs fall under, so as to qualify it for special permission?
Respectfully, Chair, it didn't. I can say it did not fall to any of those three categories, but
who recommended those to the CMO to sign off on then?
I will defer to the Chemistry, Food and Drug Division.
Mr. Khan, hat is being passed to you.
Okay.
Who recommended Phillips milk of magnesia, Listerine, Bengue, Redoxon, to say, just identify a few. It's not an exhaustive list. Who would have recommended that to the CMO to sign off on?
Okay, so I do recall recommending Listerine and those things. The milk of magnesia, the only reason that would have been recommended if based on supply and the registered one they were unable to get and supply.
All right, hold on, because I have a little difficulty with that. Yes, I accept. But here's what it says, right? Unavailability of drugs from the registered manufacturer. So is it then, Senator Nakid, can I ask you just to whisper a bit? Unavailability of drugs from the registered manufacturer. What does that actually mean? You're bringing in a drug, the same drug, by a different manufacturer?
No, what it could mean is that the place where it is manufactured could be the same manufacturer, but the location, there may have been a change in location.
I accept that. So why wasn't that made clear here? A change of location. We all know that manufacturers diversify their supply chains and they have factories in different parts of the world. We know that for various reasons. All right? But what it suggests here is that the drugs are unavailable from the registered manufacturer. So what that leads the public to believe is that it's being sourced from a different manufacturer. Right? In the culture of horology, a manufacturer is a specific place. I don't know it to be so in pharmaceuticals. All right? But I have some questions for you, Mr. Khan, and Mrs. Siboo as well. Yeah, sure? Your mic, Senator John.
Right. No one was able to answer the question where the special permission authority came from, right? Nobody, former PS, Mr. Ali, you met it like that when you became the PS of the ministry, this process of special permission?
It would have started before, and as I said, remember, none of those applications, the process, nothing comes through my office. That was,
Okay,
yeah.
so you said it started before. Now, we were provided a list of 2,716 for the period 2015 to 2024. Is it, sorry, 2,761, not 16. Is it this process of special permission, did it exist before 2015? Anybody could say? Yes, Ali?
I'm not sure, remember, I started in 2018, so I'm not sure.
Ms. Siboo?
I started in 2018 September as well, so I was.
Mr. Haidar Ali?
Not to my recollection, no.
So you're saying it started in 2015?
Well, I was involved in drugs at that time, but prior to that, when I was in drugs, no. The DAC met and considered all drugs that came before them, even products that were critical to the country. I can recall one for the bird flu, the H1N1 vaccine. It was a critical issue.
Okay, that's my question in relation to this.
Right, so great. Now that so let me ask you, the first special permission granted in 2015, it's at Appendix 1, was dated 3rd September 2015 to Smith Robertson and Company Limited. Okay? P.S., this is in your document that you provided.
Yes, Chair.
And that was for Byetta solution for injection, pre-fill pen, 5 micrograms or 10 micrograms. Then the second one was on the 10th of September 2015, granted to Bryden Pie Limited. Then at 25th September 2015, Smith Robertson again for Galvas. And then 15th October, ICU Ophthalmic and Medical Supplies, right? So those were the 4 granted in 2015. So if we go to the numbers, but I think we've been through the numbers already. So it really started in September of 2015, and then it began to spike. And for some reason, in 2023, 505 were granted. So, Mr. Khan, can I ask you this? You said to me, in a straight answer to a straightforward question, I commend you for that special permissions never went to the DAC.
Special permit never went to the DAC as far as I'm aware.
All right. Were you present at a meeting of the DAC dated Wednesday, 16th October 2024?
I do apologize, but I don't recall the details.
I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy. Do you have a copy, Minister Hussain? I have an additional copy here, but I'll be grateful if you can give it. Please, look at that. It's a meeting dated 16th October 2024, online meeting, Zoom online meeting platform, 243rd meeting, right? Do you see that? This was distributed to all members. All members have this. The first submission. Have you found it? Yes. Right. Right. So do you see the first name present there? Mr. Faz Khan. Okay? Do you see that?
Yes, Chair.
So it means you were present.
Yes, Chair.
Then there was the other members, but I want to single out a few members, right? Dr. Saeed Rahman. He was there.
Yeah, he was the deputy chair.
He was the deputy chair.
But his designation is deputy chair, and he would chair the meeting in the absence.
In the absence of the chief medical officer.
Yes.
Right? And then there were several advisors and so on, right? Dr. Parasram was absent, Dr. Patron was absent, and Ms. Chantel Dan was absent. So I want you to then go 1, 2, 3. I want you to go now, turn over 4 leaves at item 1.3. Special permission submissions. You see that there?
Correct. Yeah, yes, Chair.
Just, Minister John wants to follow along, so I'm trying to find an alternative copy which I have to pass to her. Can someone facilitate Mr. John? I have one, but if you could forgive me for a moment. All right, somebody give her one. So here's where we are, right? 1.3, you see it there? All fairness.
Yes, Chair.
And permit me to read. Dr. Rahman stated that the law does not have any thing written for special permission. So the committee was being warned specifically by the deputy chair that there was no legal basis for granting special permission. You agree with me?
Yes, Chair.
However, sometimes there is a need for a drug on short notice, for example, in the case of an outbreak. Special permission is granted under those circumstances. That is correct. Okay? And if we go back to the days of COVID and monkeypox, we will see that the DAC met to approve those drugs. I don't want to belabor the point, but it's here in the minutes. I've read all of them. Mr. Khan explained, and that is you.
Yes, Chair.
That there may be issues with the supply chain. Consideration is given by the CMO to issue approval for the public and private sector. Okay? And that's you talking there, Mr. Khan.
Yes, Chair.
You beginning to recall now that you went to the DAC with these special permissions?
On instruction from the CMO.
On instructions from the CMO, you came to the DAC with special permissions in circumstances where you've told us previously that the regulatory framework did not provide for the DAC to be involved in this?
Okay, so if I could provide that clarity, and I did provide that clarity, the DAC looks at registration. So based on the directive of the CMO, he held a meeting with myself and Ms. Siboo. And actually he wanted to bring an end to special permission.
Okay, we get in there.
So he directed us to move towards special products that were given the special permission permit to go through the registration process. So that is what this meeting looked at in bringing those products that were given special permission for whatever reason, so the DAC can consider and then make a recommendation
No,
to register.
hang on. So before the registration, the CMO was, after the registration, the CMO was telling you that these special permissions were granted already, then go to the DAC? Is that what you're telling us?
Okay, but so what I'm saying is that these products were already granted special permission on how many occasions? And the directive given is to bring, a list is provided to us to get these products registered by the, or recommended, reviewed, and then recommended by the DAC for it to be registered. And that was the directive given by the CMO at that point.
All right, so we'll examine the minutes. So this was pursuant to the CMO doing that, right?
Yes, Chair.
Mrs. Siboo, you know somebody called Vishal Singh?
Yes, Chair.
Is he an employee of Smith Robertson Aventa?
He is the responsible pharmacist.
He is?
The responsible pharmacist.
Did you, on October 10th, how many days before this meeting? Six days before this meeting, did you on October 10th write an email to Mr. Singh saying, "Good day, Mr. Singh. Submit for all conventional products once you have submitted to the office of the CMO for permission. Did you send that email to an applicant directly?
Chair, on the advice of the CMO, as Mr. Khan would have mentioned, we
So the
asked...
CMO, yes,
Yeah.
advised you to breach the regulatory protocol of the ministry and reach out to an applicant directly.
So, Chair, it would have been to all applicants who would have gotten special permission before.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you able to produce those emails? You must have them if you send them to all applicants.
I would get them for you.
Right. So after that, he says, "Dear Ms. Siboo, thanks for the clarification." And then you send him another one. "Good morning. Please ensure you submit the artwork as well." Right? So Mr. Khan. Yes?
Chairman, I'm looking at the email thread. I just want to ask Ms. Siboo, if you were acting on the instructions of the CMO to reach out to Mr. Singh from Aventa, why didn't you copy the CMO on the emails?
And if I may just follow on, Chair, I'm looking at the emails, and I'm not seeing anyone else from the Ministry of Health actually copied on those emails. It's a lot of persons from Smith Robinson, from the applicant. So let's be clear, it's on the applicant. Everybody else copied on the emails from the applicant's organization. And I'm a little concerned, Chair, that we are invoking the name of the CMO, and the CMO himself is not copied on any of these emails, yes, and for an important matter like this.
Well, rest assured, in highest adherence to the hallowed principles of procedural fairness, at the close of today's session, the CMO is going to be advised of what has been said and a full transcript provided to the CMO, and he's going to be invited to come to tell us what really happened here.
But Chairman, can I have an answer? Why the CMO was not copied on these emails?
Member, I really do apologize. I don't know. It should have now. I mean, I know he should have been copied, but I don't know why I did not.
Mm-hmm.
It is the correct thing to do, though. So I do humbly apologize, but I know it is the correct thing to do.
Mr. Khan, this is directed to you. On the 29th of October, 2024, this is 13 days after the meeting, right? Did you send an email to the same Vishal Singh at Smith Robertson, where you said, "We spoke about the GMP submitted and required information needed to move the process forward"? Did you send that email?
Yes, Chair.
Who gave you instructions to send that email?
So all this process was based on instructions and directive given by the CMO to have all of these special permission go through the DAC. And
hang on a second. Okay, finish your thought.
Yeah, to go through the DAC so that they can go through the registration process.
So prior to 2024, all of the permissions granted prior to 2024 never went through the registration process?
Not to my knowledge, Chair.
So that special import permits would be granted in circumstances where the body responsible for interrogating the scientific provenance was completely left out of the process? I'm awaiting an answer, Mr. Khan.
Certainly didn't go through the normal process. So yes.
Mr. Khan, the Food and Drugs Act establishes a body which investigates the scientific and medical provenance of a pharmaceutical. So prior to October of 2024, none of these pharmaceuticals was subject to the interrogation of that specialist body.
Yes, that is correct.
And that specialist body is responsible for the protection of the public health. Mr. Khan, yes or no?
Yes, Chair.
Don't you find it somewhat alarming that a system could be developed where the very arm responsible for protecting the public health safety of Trinidad and Tobago was completely left out of the system?
I think only the CMO could provide that answer and reasoning and justification.
So this is what you say to Mr. Khan, to Mr. Singh, all right? We spoke on the GMP and all of that. And this is what Mr. Singh, this email was sent at 11:59 p.m., a minute or 12 in the night. And if I were to quote, if I were to somewhat quote Minister John, the hour for Parrot and Dwen, 11:59 in the night, in midnight, you send Vishal Singh an email. We spoke about the GMP submitted and required information needed to move the process forward. Vishal Singh, being the ever diligent worker, responds at 12:11. Dear Mr. Khan, I trust all is well. We await from our supplier the CPPs as well as GMP for the below, after which we will prepare and send the dossiers to the Ministry of Health. And he lists out, okay? Our deadline to submit was carded as October 31st, Thursday, which, as you know, is a public holiday in Trinidad and Tobago. Based on the expected time to receive the documents above, we request permission from you to extend the time into early November, thus allowing us sufficient time to receive and forward the applications as required. Kindly find attached GMP, yielding pharmaceutical, which was requested for warfarin, and all of that. And then they tell you about two other drugs, which when they receive the GMPs, they will forward, okay? So you were in direct contact with someone you were regulating. So then we have who is Lisa Bisnath? She's the administrative assistant of the Office of the Chief Medical Officer, right? Correct. What was her role in this? She's not a technical person, is she? Mr. Khan?
I'm not aware that she's a technical person.
Right, so what was the business of Lisa? I'm sorry to put it as bluntly as that. What was the business of Lisa Bisnath to be liaising directly with suppliers?
Actually, I cannot answer that.
But you see, and then Vishal Singh sends an email, the same Vishal Singh sends an email to Ms. Bisnath on September 17, 2024, 10:12 a.m. Dear Ms. Bisnath, kindly find the attached special import permit request for Dostinex. Original documents have been couriered and will be delivered later today. How do you explain that?
Chair, I have no explanation, because I'm not involved with those conversations, so I cannot provide
No. Your name is on these emails, Mr. Khan. You are in this conversation, trust me.
Oh, okay.
Your name is in these emails, you're copied. So let's get to our next thread. 2 days before the meeting. From Vishal Singh again. We shall refer to him as the ubiquitous Vishal Singh. On Monday, 14th October 2024 at 11:04 a.m. to Anissa Doodnath-Siboo, copy Rodney Barup, amongst other persons, Nicole Ali, Caroline Maraj, Shana Bihari. So, it starts off with Vishal Singh at 8:49 a.m. sending to you, Ms. Siboo, 2 attachments. A drug listing for Smith Robertson's special permission documents. This is 2 days before the meeting, you know. Kindly guide us on timeline for submission. So at 8:49, this is an applicant directly liaising with the regulator in private email. Then at 4:14, Vishal Singh again, and this is what he says. Dear Ms. Siboo, see attached listing of products currently on special import for which we would like to forward the abridged dossier. What's an abridged dossier? What is an abridged dossier?
Chair, respectfully, I don't know what an abridged dossier is.
But certainly an abridged dossier would not qualify for consideration at all.
Agreed.
So this listing, which contained all these abridged dossiers, should have been rejected ab initio from the start. Wouldn't you agree with me?
I would agree with you, Chair. Should have been.
It should have been rejected, Mrs. Siboo, right. Mrs. Doodnath. Sorry?
So no, I'm just saying that he would have sent the email and he would send it, but that would go through to the drug registration and the DAC for them to make that decision.
No, hold on. You can't have it both ways, you know. You cannot have this both ways. Mr. Khan told me that these special permits do not go to the DAC or the DRU, and this was done solely through the Office of the Chief Medical Officer. So isn't it correct that a submission which attaches an abridged dossier should have been rejected summarily?
Agreed, Chair.
And then he tells you, kindly review and let me know your comments. Was he placing you in the position of advisor to Smith Robertson?
Well, in that regard, I would think he was doing.
So why didn't you respond and say, hold a minute, I'm not your advisor. I am a public official with a fiduciary duty to the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Why didn't you respond to him and put him in his place, literally, as we say in Trinidad?
Chair, honestly, I can't.
I'll tell you why.
Yes.
Because then you respond at 4:40. 26 minutes later, I assume you were on the road. Good day, Mr. Singh. Submit all conventional products once you have submitted to the office of the CMO for permission. And you put all in capital letters. What, forgive me for the informality and the somewhat and the outrage, but what in heaven's name was a regulator doing having conversations like this with an applicant? Where he was signing off as Vishal. No interface, no intermediary, no protective barrier. What were you thinking, Mrs. Doodnath?
Chair, respectfully, as mentioned before, Mr. Khan and I were given the directive by the Chief Medical Officer to ensure that all of the applications, all of the special permissions that were granted before that period of time, because there was an increase in the amount of applications coming to the office and bypassing the regulatory registration process. So we were asked to reach out, make sure that they submit all of the applications to do the necessary in order for their products to be registered, so that there would be a reduction or elimination of the special permission.
Chairman, before Ms. Siboo keep referring to the CMO, can you just identify that person by name for us, please?
At that point in time, the CMO of the country was Dr. Roshan Parasram.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know why I'm not buying that story? I'm sorry if I sound so. Because this has nothing to do with registration. This had to do only 157 products was sent to the DAC in the October 24th meeting. Only 157. So it cannot be that out of 2,700 and more special import permits, only 157 were sent to the DAC. Let me use a colloquialism to describe it. The mats not matsin. And you see, I want to get on further in this meeting. Mr. Khan, I have some further questions to address to you on this meeting. Mrs. Siboo, you agree with me? The mats not matsin.
Yes, Chair, but... Okay.
So then, on Friday, 11th October, the ubiquitous Vishal, and this is how he describes himself. I didn't ascribe this description to him. This is how he describes himself in the email. Dear Ms. Siboo, kindly guide us on the timeline for submission. Also, please let us know the cost per application as we need to finalize check. Along with the documents listed, we are providing the attached worksheet. If there's another form you would like us to complete, please indicate CPP, GMP, Artworks, PIL. See also revised listing on your feedback, again soliciting your advice. Why would he do that? Was he so familiar with you? Why would you overstep that bound of familiarity?
So, Chair, it is not the correct thing to do, but I'm saying as professionals in the, pharmacists, basically. But it is not the correct thing to do. I understand that. But I can't answer as to why he would. But it's conversations that we usually have just to ensure that they get what is supposed to be submitted so that they will do what is required, basically.
And then, on October 11th, this is the morning conversation. The afternoon conversation, early evening conversation at 4:45 p.m. You then tell him this, am I correct? Good day, Mr. Singh. The cost per application is standard, $750. Please reach out to Mr. Khan. And I'm not going to out your cell number on national TV, right, Mr. Khan? And you provide Mr. Khan's personal cell number as well. Why did you do that?
Chair, that's the number that the ministry would have been assigned, and so it is.
So you felt comfortably enough with Vishal to provide the personal cell number of the head of chemistry, food and drugs for him to reach out to Mr. Khan, who was the regulator?
So, Chair, we usually have that conversation between Mr. Khan and I, and we would ask them to just reach out to any one of us in order for us, for ease of doing or submitting the applications for doing business, basically. But it's not the correct terminology, but just to have somebody, rather than calling the ministry and nobody's answering, they're not getting a response. In some instances, they will just reach out to us directly.
Senator Naked has a question.
Mr. Khan, did you give Ms. Siboo permission to give out your cell phone number?
Permission was not asked, so permission was not given.
All right, so let's get on with this meeting of the famous
May I just
and
ask a
singular
question?
meeting of October.
Chairman, may I just ask a question? And
Sure.
it could be answered generally
Sure.
by anybody. I know sometimes in ministries, things take longer than anticipated. Was this an attempt to try and expedite the process of getting these permissions in and getting regulatory permissions and other types of permissions? Because it is, I know that the dossier is a large document. There are other documents to be presented. Was this an attempt by the ministry or even Chemistry, Food and Drugs to try and make sure that importers, pharmacists, and so on understood the process and were able to proceed in a way that would expedite the process?
I think from my recollection, the CMO gave us an extremely short period to have this completed. Extremely short period to have all of this completed. So the period is really short, and I don't want to use the word pressured, but that might be an appropriate word in terms of meeting these very short deadline that he had set himself to bring this special permission into, or not to continue with the special permission.
Is it also, would I be correct in saying that the special permissions have existed for decades?
The answer to that has already been given.
I think prior to 2015, previous directors would have gotten requests for special permission. I do have the document, but hearing other directors, there were instances where special permission was requested prior to 2015, from my understanding.
Perhaps I could ask you this.
Thank you.
And we have it from evidence last week. You agree with me that having regard to the criteria, the express policy criteria set by the ministry, that special permission should never be granted for trade purposes? Mr. Khan?
I think CMO could give that justification in terms of providing a response.
All right, so now I want to go on a little bit. Sure.
Like this mic, I feel like my voice is loud enough. This question could be answered by Mr. Khan or Ms. Siboo. Trade purposes. Trade use doesn't also include provision of drugs to private hospitals that would require the drugs. Doesn't that also fall under trade use? Ms. Siboo or Mr. Khan?
Member, yes. It
Yes.
will also include 3 private hospitals, medical centers. In addition, it will also include for personal use, but persons will authorize local importers to procure on their behalf. So for personal use as well, it doesn't mean that the person themselves is importing it, but they would give authorization to the local importer. But for the purposes of the ministry to identify which area it is coming in, it will either be for government use,
Right.
or it'll be for anything outside of government use
Right.
can be considered trade. Private medical centers, as
Right.
well as persons who doctors and endocrinologists would want, for example, the Dostinex for their clients.
Dostinex is what? What kind of drug is it?
So it's an endocrine
So is it related
medicine
to
for-
cancer? Or
No, it's not an oncology, it's an NCD.
NCD?
Yeah, basically.
So
to
private
treat-
hospitals are
yes,
for
yes,
critical
and
treatment
private,
that often
right.
doesn't occur in government, in the public hospitals,
It's not
right?
yes, it's not
Okay.
available in the public sector, but that
Thank
is
you.
how the trade and the government will be differentiated and classified.
I feel it's the classification that causes the confusion.
Now, let me ask you a somewhat facetious question. Reduction is for private hospitals? That's a facetious question, Mrs. Siboo, to demonstrate the...
Conundrum.
No. There is no clear pattern as to why, no clear policy. Minister Hossain?
Yes, Chairman. On that same point that Senator Bates raised, John Bates raised, why is it individuals were granted special permission to provide these supplies to the government? There are instances where individuals...
That was the question. In 2020, we have a number of individuals and other places, special permissions to bring in.
One of the category for special permission was for personal use. However, we are seeing here that individuals were given special permission to import for the government. I could give you the date also. Yeah.
This one?
Appendix 3 from the page isn't numbered, no. It was in March 2020. Can I have an answer?
If I may, Chair, piggyback on that, a lot of piggybacking happening today. Also in 2020, in January of 2020, Smith Robinson was granted a special permission for personal use. If we can have some clarity around that. So yeah, if we can have some clarity around that. The document is a very extensive listing, and I know that it may not be easy to recall everything, but this is the evidence submitted by the ministry. And again, for our clarification, but also for the viewing public, because at the end of the day, what we want are the best possible outcomes for the national community, which is why we're interrogating in this kind of way, so that in moving forward, we can have better outcomes for the people of Trinidad and Tobago and better spend. So if we can clarify both Minister Hossain's question in terms of the individual, the special permission, the special permits, special permissions issued to individuals for government purposes, but also issued to Smith Robinson for personal use.
If I could prefer an answer for the personal use.
Pardon?
If I could prefer an answer for the personal use.
Granted to Smith Robinson.
Right, so what I recall in those instances, prescription would have been provided by a specialist. They would have submitted, the patient would have submitted that prescription to Smith Rob. And then Smith Rob will make an application on behalf of the patient based on the prescription that is provided by the, be it an oncologist. In most cases, with those type of drugs. Yeah, so that's a possible answer that I can prefer in terms of that instance.
But what about the individual for government?
For government, yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not aware of that one.
Is there a reason why the individual, Madam Permanent Secretary, can I direct this to you, please? If you can answer, I understand your limitations in terms of occupation of the chair, but can I ask you Why is there a reason why the individual is not named in these tables? Because there are many tables where the individual, we just have simply individual.
But is
Yes,
there some,
so-
Chair, is that a question that we should pose to the person who occupied the chair previously?
I don't know
P.S.
where,
Ali?
Mr. Ali, would you know why the individual is not named on these special permissions? Or is the individual person named? But I can't, it has to be for customs purposes.
Chair, no, I don't have the answer. I could just surmise. I mean, this is just possibly patient confidentiality into providing the information. I don't know, but I don't know the reason.
No, but Chairman, if they're providing for government, then there is no patient confidentiality.
Yes,
for customs
because it's
purposes
for
as
sale.
well.
It's quite obvious it's for sale.
Meant for personal use, sorry, my apologies.
No. What Minister Hossain is on to is that special permissions were granted to individuals for government purposes.
Apologies, I misunderstood.
So now that we've clarified P.S. Ali, is there any clarity you can provide? The basis on which the individuals are not named. Now, this submission came from your successor, but you would have sat in the chair at the time, based on the information that we have here, you would have sat in the chair. But these are individual, they're named as individual, the generic term, being granted special permissions to import, to service the government request. So if you can.
So through the chair, so remember I would have mentioned earlier that the whole process of special permissions did not pass through my office in terms of the applications, the processing, or the approval or rejection of same. So I can't answer that question, unfortunately.
So, Mr. Khan, after Dr. Rahman raised these red flags, very properly so, and pointed to the lack of legal jurisdiction and a lack of legal basis to grant special permissions, right? You then said, consideration is given by the CMO to issue approval for public and private sector. Basic documents are required as well as labeling. CMO intends to eliminate this. Let me ask you this. PS, as of today, is that special permission process, is it in force or has it been stopped?
It has been stopped, Chair.
So in October of 2024, you told the DAC that they needed to act quickly and with alacrity because October 31st was the cutoff date. That's 2024, right? And that the CMO intended to stop this. And that's why you prevailed on the DAC to make these recommendations and to accept them. 2020, let me see the list. But yet, no, the one with the figures. In 2025, we have, how many granted? How many granted in 2025? No, that's not it. I'll get it for you just now. So in October of 2024, you told them it was going to be stopped in 2024, okay?
Right, based on directive from the CMO.
But the process continued well into 2025.
Okay, I can only go based on what the CMO would have
What day
indicated
did you
us.
leave the ministry, Mr. Khan?
Would have been around May.
Of 2025. You took early retirement, did you not?
Yes, I did. And
Okay.
just to clarify, in terms of the DAC meeting, I wasn't the one to direct the DAC.
What were you doing?
Into providing information to the DAC, but not to direct the DAC to approve any of those drugs. That was my role and function.
So the other members were raising legitimate red flags. Dr. Ramnarayan asked what was the reason for applying for special permission and if that information will be provided. And this is what you say, Mr. Khan. Mr. Khan replied that requests are from oncologists. So if we go through this list of drugs, all these are oncology drugs?
Chair, I don't know whether you have confirmed minutes, but if those minutes are not confirmed, then in terms of the information in those minutes, may be incomplete. So oncology would be normal reasons why special permission was requested.
All right, so let's go to this meeting was in October, okay? This meeting was 16th October. The next meeting was 19th February. Okay? So there were no meetings at the end of after this meeting in October of 2024. At least we have not been provided. So it's 243rd. The next meeting we have evidence of is the 246th. The 244th and the 245th meetings are missing from the minutes. P.S., can I prevail on you to make a diligent search to provide those minutes for us?
Yes, Chair.
They're missing from the bundle that we were provided with. So that's what you said, Mr. Ali. Mr. Khan, I want to know if we go through this list, if all these are oncology drugs.
Right, so as I said, I don't think the minutes are complete, so we would have captured certain information based on this what I'm hearing, because certainly it's not only oncology drugs that were on the list.
Well, let me put it somewhat facetiously. There are birth control pills on that list. How does birth control pills qualify for special permission? Dr. Raham, so let me ask you this, Mr. Khan. If we call Dr. Rahman and Dr. Ramnarayan to give evidence here, and they confirm that you told the committee that these drugs were at the request of oncologists, would you agree with me that you would have misled the committee?
No, because they are doctors, they are very familiar with the type of drug it was. So they could not have been misled in thinking that all these pharmaceuticals were oncology drugs.
What about a layperson on the committee? Who was a layperson? The committee has to have a layperson by composition, by statutory definition. Who was the layperson?
I think it would be, right, there's an error there. It's not Dr. Deliberations. It's not a doctor.
Okay.
So that would be the layperson, I believe. But at that meeting, there were no explicit intent to mislead. But what I'm
just asking you that, you know.
What I'm saying, the minutes didn't capture everything that was discussed in the meeting.
So when you attended the next meeting, did you, when the minutes of the meeting were being reviewed, did you make an application to amend, alter, add to the minutes, or correct the minutes?
I'm uncertain whether the minutes came up for review at that meeting.
So 244th and 245th, certainly by the 244th meeting, the minutes of the 243rd would have been reviewed. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, but I know that, from my memory, I do think it was provided to the committee, in the sense that the committee focus was on going through the drug listing that was provided to the committee.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. This meeting here of the 16th of October 2024, I see it is saying something. It is labeled special permission submissions. But were these in relation to special permissions for items that were normally tendered for through MOH? And this meeting was really about trying to ensure that you brought these special permissions to end to follow with OPR guidelines going forward? Was it anything to do with the new procurement regulation coming into force, hence the deadline of October?
Right, so based on the directive given by CMO, his justification was that he wanted to bring an end to special permission.
For what reason? Was it anything to do with the new OPR regulations, procurement regulations?
I do think so. But I think it was becoming possibly a norm, and the CMO wanted to put an end to this, hence the reason why he set such tight deadline where we had to comply with those deadlines.
And these drugs, were these drugs that were normally tendered for? Acetamol and what was it?
Well,
diazepam and fungifex. I don't even know if I could pronounce half of these. Calms, Lovir cream, with these.
Right, so I wouldn't know when I'm not involved in the tendering process.
So I guess I need
yeah.
NIPDEC. I don't think there's anybody from NIPDEC here. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I'll leave it there.
Mr. Khan. There's a puzzling aspect of this. You will see there, and I'm trying to make some sense out of this paragraph, and quite frankly, it's somewhat challenging to me, and I accept it might be my own limitations. But here's what it says. It says 157 special permission submissions were presented by Mr. Khan in the order on the listing. There were no objections to the remaining drugs as well as those indicated below. So in addition to these, and then there follows literally 4 or 5 pages, okay? So am I correct in saying that 157 special permission submissions were presented and there were no objections to the remaining drugs? So the 157 was not the exhaustive list?
It could be interpreted in the sense that you have the other submissions that came into the meeting as well.
Right, and I'll tell you why. If you go to the conclusion, it says, Mr. Khan said that the remainder of the special permission will be sent round robin to DAC members. So in addition to the 157 you presented at that meeting, you plainly had more than 157.
No, I think what I recall is that all of the, when the list was provided, documents were missing. So obviously those could not go through the approval.
Well, that's not what this says, you know.
So now I'm saying the minutes is unconfirmed, sir.
No, Mr. Khan. Here's what this says. It says there were no objection to the remaining drugs as well as those indicated below. Okay? So that seems to suggest that all of these drugs in this table was approved except the ones where there was deferral, and this has just a few. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 pages of drugs where missing information has to be confirmed. But yet the special permissions were granted.
From my estimate, I don't think it was granted.
But this is what the minutes say. There were no objections to the remaining drugs as well as those indicated below. That's what it says. It says that they were approved despite missing information.
Okay, but I'm saying that once it's missing information, then it could not have gone forward.
Mr. Khan, I know that's what you want to tell me. But if you turn over leaf, the first two, there was insufficient information to make a decision. So whoever was taking the notes was careful enough to say that no decision was made. So the first 4 or 5, okay? There's a note. The first 4 or 5, there's a note, and then there's this, on the penultimate one, the Calms Day, this drug was placed on hold. Okay? So whoever was taking the minutes was careful enough to record the deliberations of the DAC to show that the approvals were not granted. But the rest of them, missing information has to be confirmed. When you go back to what the minute says, it appears that they were approved despite missing information.
The only thing I could postulate is only when the information is confirmed, then it would be sent back to the, based on information sent to the members to make a determination. It could
Well,
not have moved forward.
let me tell you this frontally. In all the minutes which exist in the Ministry of Health, this is the only meeting in which special permission was discussed. There's not a single meeting of the DAC which special permission went to, despite 2,700 permissions being granted. This is the only meeting. And why is the answer? What was so magical about October 31st that this thing had to be completed by October 31st?
As I mentioned before, directive was given by the CMO in terms of the deadline and what has to happen.
All right, how was this directive given? Seeing that the emphasis now is on the CMO, how was the directive given? Let's drill down into the details.
Okay, so what I recall, myself and the principal pharmacist, Ms. Siboo, was called to a meeting and advised and directed in terms of what's going to happen and how we're going to move forward with these special permission. The directive was given to bring all of these drugs into registration via the DAC.
All right, what is the date of that meeting?
I don't recall the exact date. I don't know
where was the meeting held?
So it was held in the CMO office of the CMO.
Who was present?
So myself, Ms. Doodnath-Siboo, and CMO.
Just 3 of you?
Yes.
The CMO's assistant, Ms. Bisnath, wasn't there?
Not from recollection, no.
So how Ms. Bisnath got involved in the email exchanges then, if she wasn't part of this?
I can't answer that.
How were the instructions given to you? Were there email?
No, verbal instruction given to both
So
myself.
hang on, let's get this correct. CMO summons you and Mrs. Doodnath-Siboo Doodnath into a meeting, and he tells you, 3 of you all alone, and he tells you, listen, I want to stop this special registration process, special import permit process. I want you all to go and register everybody and reach out to all the importers. Am I correct?
Yes, from my memory, those are the instructions that were
All
given
right.
generally.
So, and those email communication to all the importers would be stored on the server of the Ministry of Health. Am I correct?
It should be.
Mrs. Siboo?
Yes, Chair, it should be.
So if we ask PS to provide us with all the email between that period to all the importers, we will see email going to all the importers and not just a select few for this registration process, right? I want to be assured of that, Mrs. Siboo. Because the documents must exist on the ministry server, you know. Am I correct?
So, Chair, I want to be, the importers would have been the ones, and I'm being very honest, the importers would have been the ones that would have been given permission for, I don't remember right now, but I may be able to, maybe like 23, 24, based on the volume of permissions that were coming to the office for this consideration.
All right, so this meeting, what I'm interested in is pursuant to the policy decision which this three-person meeting emanated out of this three-person meeting, when nothing in writing exists. You told me, and Mr. Khan told me, that you all reached out to all the importers to tell them what they needed to provide to facilitate this expedited process. Am I correct?
Chair, you are correct. And what I'm saying is that the importers captured under the all would be the ones that would have been from 23, 24 that we were seeing with the increase in the amount of applications.
All right, so 23, 24, we would see, let's get the list. 23, 24, we would see email going to Vernon Technologies, AA Lackey's, Smith Robertson, Massey Distribution, Ultra Farm, Bryden Pie. I'm not going to go through the entire list. So what we're going to do is today, after we adjourn, we are going to send the permanent secretary a requisition for a search of the server of the Ministry of Health to determine how many importers were actually contacted in the manner in which these email from exchanges between you and Mr. Khan and Vishal at Smith Robertson to see whether or not equity applied across the board. That's what we want to see. All right, so let's get on with it a little bit, shall we, Mr. Khan? The meeting, which you can't remember the date of, which three of you were present, were any notes taken? By whom? Where are those notes that you had? You took notes? Mrs. Siboo, did you take notes?
Can't remember at the time, Chair.
Did you all memorialize this in any written form?
Normally, and I'm saying this, normally for conversations to that effect, it would be like CMO would say, there's an increase and let us reach out to the suppliers, to the importers, and do what is needed, ask them to submit for registration.
All right. Would you all recognize this was an important policy decision that was being taken? This was an important policy decision that was being taken. It was a decision being taken in circumstances where the regulatory body was being neutered. Minister John.
So much, Chairman. I see a lot of focus is being placed on Mr. Khan. And maybe I missed something. So I see Mr. Khan listed here as, this is Mr. Khan here, listed as Executive Manager, Analytical Services Career. What is your role in all of this, please?
Okay, so I was the former director up to 2025. Of Chemistry, Food and Drugs.
Okay, and what did that role permit you to do, please?
Okay, the role would entail overseeing the division, which consists of inspectorate and lab facilities. In terms of the regulation, enforcing the regulation.
Which regulation?
The Chemistry, the Food and Drug Act and regulations. Oversight of we also had the pesticide and toxic chemical unit as well. To have oversight of those different entities within the division.
And how did that bring you into the line of sight with special permissions? What was your role?
Okay, so the CMO would have sent it, the request. To
the request, what about for a particular job? About a particular
right, generally for any kind of document that comes to the CMO that is related to food and drug, he would send it to me as the director.
For what?
To provide information in terms of if there's a particular thing, let's say a labeling or front of pack labeling is something that came up through the cross-view and those sort of things, to get advice or information regarding it.
Okay, so I'm seeing in the notes provided here that the Ministry of Health, this is subject to, Chairman, Section 4 of the Dangerous Drugs Act, Chapter 1125. Importation of narcotics and narcotic-containing drugs. Is it that the Minister of Health would have approved those drugs under special permission and the CMO would have approved some other type of drugs? Because I'm hearing about milk and magnesia and those things.
Right, so under the Dangerous Drug Act, it doesn't fall under the director's remit. It falls under the drug inspector, of which Ms. Siboo is the principal pharmacist. So I have no role regarding narcotics and antibiotics.
Minister, if I could perhaps we have some assistance. There are two separate rules to be exercised. One is simply in pharmaceuticals and the other is with narcotics. The narcotics falls under the purview of the Dangerous Drugs Act. So it's not only dangerous drugs, not only has to do with marijuana and cocaine and ecstasy and so on. It has to do with other narcotics which the minister alone has the power to grant.
Okay. And then the CMO had the power to approve certain drugs, is that it? No, the special permission I'm talking about. Is it that the minister could have approved certain drugs, this narcotics and so on, and the CMO had permission to approve, give the special permission in certain instances? Or it all landed up at the minister's desk, ultimately?
No, I don't think it ended up by the minister's desk. Ms. Siboo could probably clarify, but the narcotic is something that has to be signed off by the minister. If I'm not
All right,
mistaken.
so let's clarify this for a moment, right? Minister John, would you just allow me to clarify one thing for a moment?
Yes.
So insofar as pharmaceuticals which require import permit, the ultimate approval within the body of the legislation lies solely with the minister. You agree with me with that, right? Pharmaceuticals. Within the legislative framework, it's the minister has to grant it. I didn't ask you that, we get in there. Under the Dangerous Drugs Act, narcotics which fall in the schedule of the Dangerous Drugs Act, the minister grants that as well.
Yes.
You can answer that question.
Yes.
Yes, Jay.
Yes. And hence, our entire discussion on the first half hour was the CMO, and this is in the Food and Drugs Act, the CMO has no statutory power to grant a special permission, import permission. None. And we inquired whether anybody in the ministry sought to engage the services of the legal department before this was done. No one thought of asking legal whether or not the CMO had that power. No one.
In addition, Chairman.
Yes, Minister.
Sorry. I'm coming back to milk of magnesia, just to simplify things to me. Is it that, I mean, I know we had that on the shelf in the shops in Charlottesville when I was growing up, a long time ago. But I'm hearing it's now still attracting a special permission. What does that mean? Is it based on is a new supplier, a new order? Each time it's been imported, you must seek this special permission? I'm just doing that as a particular drug.
Right, so as I mentioned earlier, once it may be coming from a different location to the one that was originally registered, then it would require the special permission issued by the CMO.
So after you get this special permission, is it that you have to now go to tender, or this special permission triggers a sole select?
No, I'm not certain whether it triggers the tender. I'm not aware, not involved in the tendering process.
Open tender process I'm talking about.
No, I wouldn't have that information. I'm not involved in tendering.
So what happens after you get the special permission for this drug? What happened after that?
Right, so the importer imports it.
So it was a specific importer then? Specific importer?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
the application is submitted by a specific entity for the special permission. Am I correct?
Yes, that is
All right,
correct.
so once that is granted, it then reverts to the applicant in the process.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
May I just ask one question for clarification? Is there a difference between a special permission and special registration? Are those two separate things?
Yes. Ideally, there's nothing called special registration, but because of the terminology used as special permission, that is what was conveyed to the DEC. So they're fully aware as this is coming as special under the special permission.
Isn't it true? Sorry, Senator.
But they're two like separate.
Yes.
So there are two separate things called special, and this meeting here with the special permissions under that was done in 16th of October 2024 was in relation to special registrations, but you just call it special permission for people to understand. Is it the special registration that was coming to an end in October?
Special permission
Was coming to
based on CMO directive.
Okay.
Mr. Khan, the registration is a good segue. Isn't it true that the special permission process was being misused by importers to avoid registration after they had gotten their special permission permits? It's in the minutes. Before you hazard a guess, I would advise that you read over those minutes.
Which minutes? I will be this.
At the last paragraph, it says, however, once special permission is granted, it tends to be continuous instead of proceeding with registration. What does that mean? The penultimate line in that page. However, once special permission is granted, it tends to be continuous instead of proceeding with registration. Doesn't that mean that the importers were getting this special permit, import permit, and were using it continuously to import these pharmaceuticals?
Yes, hence the reason why the CMO set us and give us a
Exactly.
directive to bring it to an end.
And that is in breach of the policy of the ministry that a special import permit, whether it was legal or not, which we say is illegal, I think we've established is illegal, expired on the one importation. Am I not correct?
Yes, Chair.
So what you had is that you had drugs which were not registered, drugs which escaped the scientific scrutiny, drugs which escaped the investigation of its provenance, being imported as a special permit, no further steps of registration taking place, and it being continuously imported. That's what happened. That's what the ministry says, until it's been stopped now. Am I correct, Mr. Khan?
Yes, in a lot of instances, those were the cases. Again, as the director, never give any special permit. That was remit under the CMO.
Who we've established, and you all agreed with me, had no such power. The only person who could grant an import permit for drugs in this country is the minister. And the minister is defined in the Food and Drugs Act. Even when you told my learned friend that where it comes from a different factory, that has to be the source of a supplemental permit, which is a Form D. Am I correct?
Yes, requires supplemental registration.
Supplemental registration, and that supplemental registration must go to the DAC. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
And that from the DAC, it then goes to the CMO, but ultimately it's the minister who approves it.
Yes.
So there is no provision in law to bypass this registration process. You agree with me?
Yes, Chair.
So we have 2,700 and more instances where whoever it is acted unlawfully, illegally, without jurisdiction, and ultra vires the powers contained in the Act. You agree with me? Yeah.
But clearly, based on the regulation, it doesn't fall within the Food Act and regulations.
Okay. I see Mr. Suchit raising his hand, and we're almost at the end, so I will give him his last say.
Thank you, Chair.
Do not engage
I understand.
in the peddling of rumors, speculation, or canards.
All right.
I'm warning you.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm very glad to hear that the process has been stopped. Those 2761 special import permits, I am assuming that they probably have duplication over the period of time. However, what I would like to ask, even though the process has stopped, are those products still being imported without registration?
We will find out all of that.
Thank you, sir.
So as we take the obedience to my learned friends who want to stop at 1.
Mr. Chair, remember we had a discussion where
I did,
a couple
but
questions, just not long.
all right. So we will move from this, and you want to direct those to NIPDEC?
No, actually, yes, I'll ask NIPDEC one question and go to the Ministry of Health. It's probably only like 3 questions.
Very well. We will stop there for the moment. P.S. You will get a letter from my trustee secretariat who will outline, we want a comprehensive search of the server. We want to see that there was equity and that all importers were given the same treatment as Smith Robertson and the ubiquitous Vishal. Senator John Waits?
Yes. This is coming out of the discussion we had on the last occasion about the emails, yeah, and the payments. And Mr. Ramphali, you would have indicated after that series of questioning that the Minister of Health would have instructed that preferential payments be paid to a particular supplier, right? That was essentially what you said.
Yes.
Right. Now, in those meetings with the minister, the other representatives from the Ministry of Health would have been the former PS, Mr. Asif Ali, and the chief principal pharmacist, Ms. Siboo.
Yes, that's correct.
So they would have always been there at these meetings, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Ms. Siboo, I just wanted to ask you because Mr. Koze had his say, Mr. Ramphali had his say. So you confirm you were present at these meetings with NIPDEC and the Ministry of Health, right? Speaking about payments.
When requested, in terms of what is asked of me, and the discussion would have been surrounding the discussion with respect to payments, but yes.
So you
yes.
were at meetings, yes? So I want to ask you, did you hear these meetings, the former Minister of Health direct that there be preferential payments to certain suppliers?
I didn't hear that there would be preferential payments. There were discussions with respect to allocations, but at the point at the meetings, I was asked, and I can only tell you what I was asked.
No, it's not about what were you asked.
Yeah.
Essentially, did you hear give these certain suppliers preferential payments, or was there a discussion or anything about policy about prorating payments?
Well, there was discussion about payments, but I don't recall hearing there's a directive, give this one that amount.
No directive give. Remember, there was a list of there were a list of companies called on the last occasion. Aventa, I don't want to get into the whole list. Smith, well, it was Smith Morrison, I guess, Vern on a whole list. You ever heard that preferential payments be given to those people?
Like preferential. I don't recall hearing preferential payments.
Okay, thank you. I will leave the others. Was about this, we had a whole thing about this ink as well. The reason for requiring ink, it didn't come out why there was a need for the ink. So maybe I could also ask Ms. Siboo that. Ms. Siboo, this thing about requiring the need to know the type of ink used on containers, yes? You remember that discussion?
Respectfully, Senator, that falls under the remit of Chemistry, Food and Drug.
So, Mr. Haider-Ali, you could tell me about this, the need for special, to know the type of ink.
The type of ink came about.
Well, I know time is short, so let me just get straight to it. Isn't it the requirement to know the type of ink to ensure that the ink used on the package doesn't include harmful chemicals such as
heavy metals?
Heavy. And there's one called nitrosamine. Am I saying that right?
Nitrosamine.
Right.
Yeah.
So isn't that the need to ensure that there's no diffusion of that ink onto
your hands, so
and onto the tablets
and onto yourself?
So it's about securing the safety of the public.
Correct.
And the same thing with this labeling issue that arose today. The labeling of package, I think Mr. Khan, that was directed at him. The need to have clear labeling and why we can't have labeling in different languages. You would have said that if the drug was registered with a labeling in English, if you saw any diversion, let's say you saw another language, you would require that it be re-registered, yes?
So if it is first registered in English, in the English language, and it comes in where there's a dual language, then that is considered a change.
Right.
And requires
you
the supplemental.
said that the changes, you all require the supplemental registration for public safety. You said that, right?
Primarily for public safety.
Can you just emphasize what does labeling have to do with public safety? Well, let me help you. Is there anything about counterfeiting? Was that the concern?
Right. So labeling is part of the requirements of the regulation in terms of the English labeling. And obviously for consumer, because we deal with medication, we're not dealing with drug. And there must be clear direction, clear information that is visible to the public in terms of taking medication. Because if it is you don't follow the instruction properly, if the language is not in the English, then it leads to a patient taking a medication not based on the directive of the manufacturer. And in fact, what you're going to get is a patient taking medication, but the patient has no positive impact from the medication and may cause even harm to the patient. Hence the reason the ink is also to be permanent so that information is not erased easily from the packaging. So it all leads to really public safety and the health of the consumer.
Okay, well, I won't belabor those points.
So let me ask you this. So if the product is registered in English and then it comes where the instructions are in English and other languages, you still require supplemental registration?
You see, the supplemental registration says any changes made to the original product.
Hang on a second. Manufacturer recommends English. And then in the instructions, it has English, French, German, Japanese, Chinese, Spanish. You would still recommend further registration, even though it's in English?
Yes, so that information will be in the PIL, the insert. So in that case, there may be some discretion in terms of once it has the English and easily visible, if it is in the PIL, the patient information leaflet. So in that case, you may not require the supplemental.
All right. We will discuss this at the next meeting because I intend to do some work on that. I think Senator Arts has the last question.
Chair, thank you. And I want to again thank the stakeholders for their time today, but I want to go back to a couple of issues in the email between Ms. Siboo and Vishal Singh. So I'm going to pose the questions and ask that they be submitted as written responses for the next meeting. So there is an email, October the 11th, 2024. Good day, Mr. Singh. The cost per application is standard $750. If you can have clarification on to whom that $750 is paid. So Ms. Bagalu will follow up on you because it's part of the submission that we have as part of the records. And then to the Ministry of Health, and it will be directed to the appropriate person. Of the 2,761 special permissions granted between 2015 and 2024, if I could have a sense, because I have a particular interest in the foreign exchange impact for the country at that time. So if we can have a sense of what was the total cost of the 2,761, and then if we can have it disaggregated in terms of the number of special permissions granted so that we can have a sense of who received what. We could have that line of sight to see who received what during that period. Because at the end of the day, apart from value for money for the population, we also want to look at how the foreign exchange allocations were done during that period. Chair, thanks. Those are my questions.
Thank you. And whilst we are at that, I want the genesis of where that $750 fee was decided. What was the policy decision and who took that decision? Thank you very much.
And Chair, I know you'll have the final word, but it has been, it has been kind of playing on my mind, the constant reference to the CMO gave directives. And
yes.
In one of my previous lives, when I worked in the public service, I always knew that the protocol was if a senior gave you an instruction, there will be some record of that instruction. And I find it passing strange that none of the seniors here have any kind of documentation. So if perhaps they can scour the records before the next meeting and identify some thread that says that the CMO, because he's not included in any of the communications, email communications we've seen under his name. An admin assistant is communicating under the office of the CMO, and I would just like to see something.
All I could say is that this apparent book of secrets continues, because we had a secret list. Seems as though we have a secret meeting now. But rest assured, the CMO will be contacted with a full transcript of today's evidence and be invited to respond. Thank you all very much. I want to thank members of the media for attending and the viewing and listening audience for tuning in. The officials will now be excused. Thank you all very much. You've been very helpful in your answers. Yeah.